He will pay for this!
Shh, someone might hear us.
He has betrayed us.
He will pay for this.
The sun rose slowly over the horizon, spilling gold across the wide African plains. The forest stirred with life. Birds called from the branches, and the rustling of small animals echoed in the undergrowth. It was here, at the edge of wilderness, that Cato lived and thrived. Cato was no ordinary man. He was a hunter, lean, steady, with eyes that seemed to see farther than most. His hands carried the roughness of survival, scarred by thorns and sharpened tools, but his movements were calm, precise, as if every action had a rhythm only he understood. To the villagers, Cato was more than a provider. He was a protector, a man of discipline whose snares and arrows rarely missed. Yet beneath the hard strength of his life, Cato carried a softer devotion. Every hunt, every day spent in the wild, had one purpose: to return safely to his wife, Amale. Amale was the anchor of his world. Her smile, gentle and warm, was the light he carried through the dangers of the forest. For years, their love had been a bond that even hardship could not break. When storms swept through their land, when hunger pressed hard on the village, it was Amale's laughter that steadied him. To Cato, the wild held many threats, but the thought of Amale waiting at home gave him the courage to face them all. Still, the hunter's life was not an easy one. Days stretched into nights with little rest. He would vanish into the forest, sometimes for weeks, tracking antelope or laying traps for smaller game. Each hunt was a battle against not just beasts, but the wilderness itself. Rivers that swelled without warning, snakes hidden under leaves, lions whose roars carried across the night air. Survival demanded patience, trust in one's instincts, and an unshakable will, and Cato had all three. But trust, as Cato believed, was not only for the forest. It was the foundation of his marriage. A hunter must trust his snares to hold, his arrows to fly straight, and his partner at home to keep the hearth burning with loyalty. Without trust, survival was nothing more than waiting for the end. Among the villagers, Cato's name was spoken with pride. Men admired his courage. Women whispered that Amale was lucky to have such a husband. Children ran after him, begging to see the trophies of his hunts. But admiration often hides envy, and envy can become a shadow. That shadow had a name: Tay. Tay was once Cato's closest companion. They had grown up together, racing barefoot across the fields, learning to track animals by the shape of broken grass. But where Cato grew into discipline and patience, Tay's heart bent toward arrogance. He admired Cato's skill but could not bear to live in it. When Amale chose Cato, Tay's envy deepened into something sharper, though he wore a smile that hid it well. Now, as a man, Tay hunted too, not with the same patience or honor as Cato, but with ambition that burned hot and reckless. His arrows often struck, but his pride often blinded him. And though the villagers respected his boldness, they knew Tay was not Cato. Still, there were whispers. Whispers that Tay's eyes lingered too long on Amale. Whispers that Amale's laughter had grown quieter in her husband's absence, that her gaze sometimes drifted to the horizon, searching for something beyond Cato's steady devotion. Cato heard these whispers, though he pushed them aside. He believed in Amale, believed in their bond, believed that trust was unshakable. To doubt her would be to doubt the one truth that guided his every step. But deep inside, in the silence of the forest, when the night stretched long and the stars burned cold, even the strongest hunter could feel the weight of unease. And in that silence, Cato did not yet know. The snares he set for the beasts of the wild would one day be turned against the beasts hiding in his own life. The days grew longer, and the hunts pulled Cato deeper into the forest. Each time he returned, his arms heavy with game, he searched for Amale's smile. It was still there, but softer now, a smile that seemed forced, like the sun hiding behind thin clouds. Amale had once met him at the edge of the village, her eyes bright with relief. She used to touch his arm as though making sure he was truly alive. But now her greetings had become quieter. She lingered in the doorway instead of running to meet him, her hands busy with clay pots or weaving mats. At first, Cato thought little of it. Perhaps she was tired. Perhaps the work of the home weighed on her. But soon he noticed the distance in her gaze. She sat beside him, yet her thoughts wandered somewhere else. At night, when the fire burned low, she lay awake longer than before, staring into the darkness while Cato's heart ached in silence. Amale was restless. Life with a hunter was never simple. The nights of waiting alone stretched endlessly, and the mornings without his voice pressed heavily upon her. She loved Cato, but fear grew in her heart. Fear of losing him to the forest one day. Fear of living a widow's life. That fear became a hunger for something certain, something constant. It was during these long absences that Tay began to draw near. He came first under the mask of kindness. He brought firewood when Cato was away. He carried water from the stream and spoke words that made Amale laugh, even when she tried not to. His voice was smooth, his compliments bold where Cato's had always been steady and quiet. "Why should you live as a widow before your time?" he whispered once, his eyes sharp as the edge of a blade. "A woman like you deserves more than waiting." Amale tried to resist. She turned away. She told him to leave. But each day he returned. His presence stirred something dangerous in her heart. Not love, but the thrill of being seen, of being desired. Where Cato's love was steady, Tay's pursuit was fiery, reckless. And fire, once lit, is hard to put out. The village began to notice. Their eyes followed Amale when she walked to the river. Their voices dropped low when she passed. A lingering glance here, a secretive smile there. The signs of hidden desire are never hidden for long. Cato, too, began to sense a shift. His hunter's instincts, sharp from years in the wild, caught the faintest traces of change. The way Amale avoided his eyes when he asked simple questions. The way Tay's laughter always seemed to echo near their hut. But Cato forced his doubts aside. To accuse without proof would be to wound Amale, and he could not bear the thought. Trust, he told himself, again and again. Trust is the only way to survive. One evening, as the sky darkened into violet, Cato sat repairing a snare outside their hut. The cord had snapped, leaving the trap useless. His hands worked patiently, weaving the fibers back together, tightening each knot until it held strong. Amale watched him from the doorway, her face unreadable. She saw the way his hands moved, steady and sure, his eyes focused with the same care he gave to everything, even her. And for a brief moment, guilt rose in her chest. Cato lifted the repaired snare and smiled faintly. "Even what is broken can be made strong again," he said, half to himself. Amale turned away before he could see the tears forming in her eyes. The days that followed only deepened the cracks. Amale's heart battled between loyalty and longing. Tay's visits grew bolder, his words dripping with promises of a life without waiting, without fear. And though she told herself she would resist, her steps toward him became harder to stop. Cato, unaware of the depth of danger, held to his faith in her. But the forest had taught him one lesson he could not forget. Even the strongest snare can fail if its knots are loosened. And in his home, though he did not yet see it, the knots of trust were beginning to unravel. The first time it happened, Amale told herself it was a mistake. It was late afternoon, the forest alive with the hum of insects, the air heavy after a morning rain. Cato had left at dawn, his bow slung across his shoulder, promising to return in a few days with meat for the village. Tay appeared before the sun had reached its highest point, carrying nothing but a reckless smile. Amale told him to go. Her voice was firm, but her heart betrayed her. She felt the pull of his eyes, the daring heat in his words. When his hand brushed against hers, she did not pull away quickly enough. And in the stillness of that moment, she crossed into a path she could not return from. What began as stolen touches grew into hidden meetings. The forest, once Cato's trusted ally, became their secret shelter. Under the shade of tall trees and behind curtains of vines, Amale and Tay wove a web of lies. She told herself it was only because of loneliness, only because of fear. But each meeting tangled her deeper in betrayal. The guilt gnawed at her. Every time Cato returned from the hunt, sweat on his brow and hope in his eyes, Amale's chest burned with shame. She cooked his meals, she smiled when the villagers looked, but her hands trembled when they touched his. At night, she lay beside him, her body there, but her thoughts elsewhere. Cato did not speak of his suspicions, but his instincts sharpened. A hunter learns to read the smallest signs. A branch bent the wrong way, a footprint half hidden in the dirt. And in his own home he began to notice the same signs. A scent that did not belong to him, footsteps outside at odd hours, the way Amale's eyes avoided his when he returned unexpectedly. The forest mirrored his unease. On one hunt, Cato tracked a wounded antelope. He followed its blood trail carefully, step by step, only to find it had doubled back, circling behind him. For a moment, he felt the predator become the prey. The lesson stayed with him. Danger often hides where you least expect it. Meanwhile, Tay grew bolder. What began as secret whispers turned into arrogance. He laughed loudly when Amale blushed. He brushed past her in the village with touches too lingering to be called accidents. Some villagers noticed, though none dared speak aloud what they suspected. Whispers rose like smoke, faint but spreading. Amale lived between fear and desire. She feared the villagers' eyes, feared Cato's quiet strength. Yet the fire Tay stirred in her was unlike anything she had known. Each time she promised herself it would be the last, but the pull of temptation drew her back again. One evening, when the sun dipped low and painted the sky in crimson, Amale and Tay met deeper in the forest than before. The air was thick, the trees casting long shadows. She trembled as he held her, torn between the thrill of his touch and the dread of being discovered. Every crack of a branch, every rustle in the leaves made her heart race. She knew they walked a dangerous edge. Still, she chose to stay. Cato, hunting miles away, felt a strange heaviness in his chest. He paused, listening to the forest around him. The silence felt different, unnatural. His instincts whispered that something was wrong, though he could not yet name it. The days that followed were filled with tension. Amale carried guilt like a stone in her chest, while Tay's pride swelled, feeding on the risk of their affair. And though Cato had no proof, the hunter in him knew that some unseen predator was circling closer and closer to his home. Each night, he lay awake, his mind sharpening like a blade. Trust had always been the foundation of his life, but trust can crumble when shadows grow too dark. And so the seeds of betrayal, once hidden, now sprouted into a living thing. A secret affair, thriving in the silence of the forest, unseen by most, but already dangerous enough to destroy everything Cato held dear. The forest gave warnings to those who knew how to listen. Cato always did. One evening he returned earlier than expected. The hunt had ended quickly. An antelope brought down before the sun had set. With the carcass on his shoulders, he moved swiftly through the trees, eager for the comfort of home. But as he reached the edge of the village, unease stirred in his chest. The birds were quiet. The air felt heavy. His instincts whispered, "Wait." He set the antelope down and approached silently, the way he would stalk prey. His eyes swept the ground, sharp as blades. That was when he saw them. Footprints, two sets, side by side, pressed fresh into the earth outside his hut. One was Amale's. The other was larger, heavier, and not his own. Cato froze. A storm gathered inside him, but his face remained calm. Years of hunting had taught him control. Panic scatters, patience captures. He followed the trail with his eyes. It led to the doorway, then away again, disappearing into the forest's edge. When he entered his hut, the air felt wrong. A shirt he had folded lay crumpled on the mat. The water jug had been moved, its rim damp as if someone else had drunk from it. And Amale, standing in the corner, startled when she saw him. Her hands trembled. Her smile came too quickly, her eyes shining not with joy, but with fear. "Back so soon," she said, her voice thin. Cato's heart broke quietly then. It did not shatter with noise, but with silence. The silence of a man who saw the truth, but could not yet speak it. He looked at her, and for the first time, her face was that of a stranger. That night, he lay awake beside her. Amala turned her back to him, feigning sleep. He stared into the fire's dying glow, his chest heavy with betrayal. Memories came unbidden. Her laughter when they first wed, the way she once waited by the river for his return, her voice calling his name across the fields. Each memory was now poisoned, tainted by the shadow of another man. Tay. Of course, it was Tay. The envy in his eyes, the reckless boldness, the lingering looks Amale had once brushed aside. Cato had ignored the signs, blinded by trust. Now that trust lay broken, and in its place rose something darker. Yet Cato did not rage. He did not shout or strike. Instead, he buried the storm inside, letting it grow roots deep in silence. Rage could blind a hunter. Patience could destroy. In the days that followed, Cato watched with the eyes of a predator. He noticed the way Amale's gaze drifted when she thought him unaware. He noticed how Tay lingered near their hut, pretending to sharpen tools or exchange words with neighbors, but always with a sly curve in his smile. And one afternoon, while walking back from the forest, Cato saw them together. They were not touching, but their closeness spoke louder than words. Amale's head bent toward Tay as he leaned in, his voice low, his hand brushing hers in a gesture too intimate to be innocent. Cato did not confront them. He stood hidden among the trees, his chest rising and falling with quiet fury. To reveal himself then would be to lose the advantage. No, a hunter never struck too soon. He waited until the prey was exactly where it needed to be. But the weight of heartbreak was heavier than any hunt. At night, he found himself reliving moments of love now twisted into mockery. He remembered the vows Amale had spoken, promising loyalty in front of the whole village. He remembered the times Tay had called him brother. Betrayal cut deeper than any spear could. Alone by the riverbank, Cato knelt and plunged his hands into the cold water. The reflection that stared back was not the man he once knew. His eyes had hardened, his jaw set with resolve. He whispered to himself, "The forest taught me patience, and patience is how the hunter wins." Amale noticed the change in him. He spoke less, smiled rarely, and his silences grew long and sharp. She felt his distance, and guilt tore at her. But still she returned to Tay. Desire bound her in ways she did not understand. The villagers began to sense it, too. Whispers circled like vultures, feeding on the scent of decay. Amale no longer loves him, some said. Tay has stolen what belongs to Cato, said others. But no one dared speak directly. They feared what Cato might do if the truth came from their lips. Cato did not need their words. He already knew. He was a hunter, and the hunt had changed. No longer was it the antelope or the lion. Now it was his wife and his rival, and the betrayal that bound them. The time for waiting was nearing its end. His heart was torn, but his mind sharpened with purpose. This was no longer about love alone. It was about dignity, survival, and the truth that even the strongest trust, once broken, must be answered. In silence, Cato began to plan. The hunter who once roamed the forest for game now hunted something far more dangerous: betrayal itself. Cato's silence became his weapon. Each day, he lived as though nothing had changed. He carried his spear into the forest, brought back meat, and shared it with the village. He spoke to Amale with the calm of a man whose heart was whole, though inside his soul bled. To Tay, he offered the same nods of brotherhood as before, though his mind calculated every movement, every glance. Patience. Always patience. At night, while Amale slept, Cato's hands worked quietly. He wove ropes, sharpened stakes, and prepared snares with the precision of a master hunter. But this time, the trap was not meant for animals. It was meant for humans. The forest had taught him that no creature, no matter how cunning, could escape a well-laid trap. He chose the location carefully. A clearing deep in the woods, where moonlight barely pierced the canopy. Few villagers ventured there, for it was rumored to be haunted by spirits. The perfect place for secrecy. The perfect place for betrayal to meet its reckoning. Cato laid the groundwork with meticulous care. He dug pits, covering them with branches and leaves, just as he would for antelope. He fixed ropes to trees so they would snap tight around ankles. He sharpened wooden stakes, placing them not to kill, but to wound, to immobilize. The hunter's craft turned from survival into vengeance. Each day, as he returned home, Amale's guilt seemed heavier. She avoided his eyes, her laughter forced, her words brittle. She sensed a change in him, but mistook his silence for surrender. She did not know that silence was only the mask of the predator before he strikes. Tay, bold and reckless, grew bolder still. He whispered to Amale in the shadows, promising her freedom, promising her love. "One day soon," he told her, "he will be gone, and you will be mine without fear." Amale's heart swayed between shame and desire, but still she followed him. Cato saw everything. He listened, unnoticed, hidden among the trees, his ears sharp to their whispers. He smelled the smoke of their deceit, and it guided him like a trail of blood. Then, one evening, he set the bait, returning from the forest. He told Amale with quiet conviction, "Tomorrow I will hunt further than before. I will not return until nightfall." His eyes were steady, his tone even, leaving no hint of the storm beneath. Amale nodded, her lips tight, her gaze shifting away. Cato saw the spark in her eyes. Not grief, but anticipation. That night, Amale slipped into the shadows to meet Tay. Cato followed unseen, his steps soundless, his breath controlled. He heard them speak of meeting again, alone, in the forest, where no one would find them. Exactly as he had hoped, the trap was set. When dawn broke, Cato moved swiftly. He carried his spear as usual, but instead of venturing far, he circled back, hiding himself near the clearing where his snares lay ready. He crouched low, waiting, listening to the rhythm of the forest. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the distant call of a hornbill. Hours passed. Then footsteps. Two figures emerged, Amale and Tay, walking side by side, their voices low but tinged with excitement. Taye's hand brushed her shoulder, and Amale did not pull away. They stepped deeper into the clearing. Cato's heart pounded, not with fear, but with grim certainty. Every branch, every rope, every stake lay ready. He had crafted this moment with his own hands, forged from heartbreak and silence. Tay laughed, pulling Amale close, his arrogance blinding him to the danger beneath his feet. And then it happened. A rope snapped upward, coiling around his leg and yanking him into the air with a violent jerk. Tay shouted, twisting and thrashing, but the hunter's knots held strong. He swung helplessly, caught like a beast. Amale screamed, stumbling back, and fell into the hidden pit. The branches gave way beneath her, and she landed hard, the sharp stakes scraping her skin, trapping her inside. Cato stepped from the shadows then, spear in hand, his face carved from stone. Amale gasped when she saw him. "Cato!" Her voice trembled with terror and shame. Tay snarled, hanging upside down, his pride shattered. "Coward, release me!" But Cato said nothing. His silence was more terrible than any words. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, as though even the spirits watched in awe. The hunter had sprung his trap, and now, with both betrayers ensnared before him, the moment of reckoning had come. The clearing was no longer just a patch of earth within the forest. It was a stage, and on it stood Betrayal exposed for what it truly was. Amale clutched at her arms, trapped in the shallow pit, her eyes wide with horror. The sharp stakes pressed into her sides, leaving thin cuts along her skin. She looked not at her wounds, but at Cato, her husband, who now loomed above her with the stillness of a carved statue. Tay writhed in the air, upside down, his leg bloodied by the rope's bite. Rage twisted his face. "You think this proves your strength?" He spat, his voice shaking. "A real man would face me in combat." Cato's gaze shifted to him, slow, deliberate. His silence weighed heavier than words, and Tay's bravado faltered under it. He thrashed again, but the ropes creaked and held firm. The hunter's voice finally broke the silence, deep and steady. "I have fought beasts stronger than you, Tay, and I killed them clean. You are not worth the spear." The words cut sharper than a blade. Amale began to cry, her voice trembling. "Cato, please, forgive me. I lost myself. I never meant. Cato's tone was quiet, but it struck like thunder. "You walked into his arms willingly. You brought shame into my home, into my bed. You meant every step." Amale bowed her head, tears streaking her face. Guilt clung to her like a second skin. She reached toward him, but the pit walls kept her bound. Cato paced slowly, the hunter circling his prey. He did not strike, but his presence alone was suffocating. The air seemed to thicken with each heartbeat. "When I hunted for you, Amale," he said, voice low and steady, "I thought of your smile, your voice, the warmth of your waiting. Every cut upon my hands, every night I froze beneath the stars, I bore it with pride because I carried you in my heart. And yet," he turned his face toward her fully now, his eyes burning, "oh, you carried another in yours." Amale sobbed, unable to meet his gaze. Tay's voice cracked as he tried to laugh. "She came to me because you were weak, Cato. Always out in the forest, always chasing beasts instead of tending to your own wife. You neglected her. That is why she turned to me." Cato's jaw clenched. But instead of answering with rage, he stepped closer, his shadow falling over Tay's dangling form. "You mistake devotion for weakness," he said. "You think my silence is surrender. But silence is where the hunter's strength grows. The beast who makes the most noise is always the first to fall." Tay's smirk faltered. His thrashing slowed, fear slipping into his eyes. Amale whispered from the pit, her voice breaking, "Cato, I beg you, if you cannot forgive me, then let me face judgment at the hands of the elders. Do not keep me here like this." Cato turned toward her. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he crouched at the edge of the pit, close enough for her to see the depth of his grief. "You were my heart, Amale, and you shattered it with your own hands. Tell me, what judgment do the elders know of this pain? What punishment could they give equal to watching love die before your eyes?" Amale covered her face, trembling with shame. The forest itself seemed to echo the weight of his words. Even the insects were quiet, as though bearing witness. Hours passed beneath the fading sun. Neither Amale nor Tay escaped their traps, and neither dared speak again. Kato remained nearby, watchful, unmoving, the hunter guarding his quarry. As night fell, the fireflies emerged, flickering in the shadows. The moonlight stretched long across the clearing, casting the pit and the dangling figure into haunting silhouettes. Amale shivered in the cold earth, her sobs quieting into exhausted silence. Tay hung limp, groaning in pain, his arrogance long stripped away. Both had been reduced to prey, and Cato alone held their fate in his hands. At last, Cato stood, lifting his spear. His voice was low but carried like a drumbeat in the night. The snare tightens not to kill, but to remind the prey who holds power. Tonight, you will learn that the hunter is patient. And tomorrow the village will see what betrayal looks like. Amale gasped, her hands trembling against the pit walls. No, Cato, please, not the village. I will bear your wrath alone, but not the shame of the people. Cato's gaze hardened, and for a moment, his silence seemed to promise nothing but doom. Then, without another word, he sat upon a fallen log, his spear across his knees, watching them. The night stretched on, long, merciless, heavy with the scent of justice not yet delivered. The snare had been sprung. Now it tightened with every passing hour, crushing pride, burning away illusions, leaving only raw truth in its grip. Dawn crept through the trees, painting the forest in pale gray. The night had been long and merciless. Amale's eyes were swollen from crying, her voice cracked from pleading. Tay hung weakly, stripped of his arrogance, his body sore from the rope's bite. Cato rose slowly from where he had sat all night, spear in hand, his face carved with silence. He looked at them both, not with rage, but with a cold, piercing calm. "This night," he said, his voice steady as stone, "has shown you what it means to be prey. But judgment is not mine alone. The forest saw your betrayal. The spirits of the hunt saw it, and now I will decide how you will carry it." Amale pressed her forehead into the dirt, sobbing. "Cato, I am guilty. I was weak. I let myself be blinded by flattery. I betrayed the vows we made. But I never stopped loving you. I only lost my way." Cato's jaw tightened. He turned his gaze to Tay. "And you?" Tay lifted his head, his voice hoarse. "She came to me. You abandoned her for the hunt. You left her hungry for love. I gave her what you would not. If anyone is to blame, it is you, Cato." Cato's eyes darkened. In a single motion, he lifted his spear and drove it into the ground inches from Tay's face. The wooden shaft quivered. Tay froze, terror cutting through his bravado. "You still spit lies, even with the snare around your neck," Cato said. "You took what was not yours. You fed on what you envied, and now you choke on it. You are no man, only a scavenger." Silence fell, heavy as stone. Amale raised her head, tears shining in the dawn light. "Then judge me, Cato. Strike me down if you must. My shame is already greater than death." Cato's eyes lingered on her. For a moment, grief flickered beneath his stoic mask. He saw her as she once was, the woman who had laughed by the fire, the one who had waited with open arms after every hunt. That woman was gone, buried beneath lies, yet the memory of her love clawed at his heart. He spoke, voice breaking with restrained sorrow. "If I kill you, Amale, I become no better than Tay. My spear was meant for beasts, not for the woman I once called my soul." He turned from her, looking out toward the rising sun. His decision weighed heavy, but it was his to make. "You will both live," Cato declared, his voice resonant and final. "But not as you were. You will leave this place together, bound not by love, but by shame." You will wander the wilderness, cast out from the village, from my house, from my heart. That will be your judgment." Amale gasped, her hands trembling. "No, please, not exile. Anything but that." Tay's eyes widened in fear. "Cato, you cannot!" Cato silenced him with a glare sharper than any blade. "You wanted each other. Then each other you shall have. But not here, not in the home you stained." He cut the ropes binding Tay and pulled Amale from the pit, forcing them to their knees. Their faces were pale, broken by despair. Then, with leather cord, he bound their wrists together. "This is mercy," Cato said, his voice trembling but unyielding. "You will walk away alive, but you will carry this bond of betrayal for as long as you draw breath. The forest will be your only witness now." He stepped back, spear in hand, his chest rising with the storm he had held inside. For a long moment he stared at them. His wife, his rival, the two who had shattered his world. Then he turned away, his back straight, his steps firm, leaving them in the clearing with their shame. Amale cried out, her voice echoing through the trees. "Cato!" But the hunter did not turn. The judgment had been given. The choice had been made. And with each step, Cato reclaimed what was his, not the wife who betrayed him, nor the rival who envied him, but his dignity, his strength, his unbroken spirit. The village watched as Cato returned alone. His steps were steady, but his eyes carried a weight no one dared to question. His wife did not walk at his side, nor did his rival. The absence spoke louder than any tale. Children who once ran to greet him now lingered at a distance, sensing the shadow that clung to him. Elders nodded respectfully, reading the story in his silence. No questions were asked, yet whispers passed from ear to ear. Everyone knew something had broken, though none could name it aloud. Cato did not explain. He went to his hut, placed his spear in its place, and sat by the fire. The flames crackled, but their warmth could not reach the hollow place within him. The house was emptier than ever, every corner carrying memories now soured by betrayal. Still, he did not weep. A hunter's tears fell inward, into the cracks of his heart where no one could see. In the days that followed, life moved on. The village worked, the children played, and the drums of celebration still echoed on certain nights. But Cato was changed. His laughter was gone, replaced by a quiet dignity. The people admired him not for his strength with the spear, but for his restraint. He had faced betrayal sharper than any blade, and walked away unbroken. As for Amale and Tay, they were never seen again. Some whispered they perished in the wilderness. Others believed they wandered far, bound together by shame. It mattered little. To Cato, they were ghosts, no longer part of his world. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Cato stood at the edge of the forest. The trees loomed tall, their shadows stretching long, familiar, eternal. He lifted his spear and stepped into the wilderness once more. The forest welcomed him, as it always had, harsh, untamed, yet honest. Here there were no lies, only the law of survival. Cato's heart bore scars that would never fade. Yet he walked upright, his spirit unbroken. Betrayal had wounded him deeply, but it had not taken away who he was. A hunter, a man of honor, a soul tempered by fire. And so, beneath the whispering canopy, he disappeared into the wild again, not defeated, but defined.